Good evening. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for checking in. I see you, WB Reese. Good evening, sir. So, a lot of interesting little tidbits for the evening. We're gonna get into some funny stuff today, and I got a lot of questions I need to be asking today. A lot of strange stuff going on. I just need I need to make sure it ain't just me. I need some feedback. I need to understand some things. Maybe y'all can help me out, if you know what I'm saying. So we're gonna get right to it, y'all. Stand by. All right. So, jumping straight into this thing. It appears today that the stock market, Antonita, how are you tonight? The stock market has taken a tumble today, if you will. And they're saying that the investors are nervous. They're nervous because it appears that the coronavirus is once again on the rise. It's reemerging, even though I don't think it ever went anywhere. And investors are afraid of another shutdown. Well, the upside of the market going down is this is a good time to invest. But I say do it with common sense, like always. Use good business practices. Kim Johnson, I see you. Thank you for checking in. Phyllis Harris, how are you this evening, my dear? Out there on the East Coast. We got our East Coast family in the building. We got to pay attention to what's happening in this market. Now, people keep talking about, and this is something that I keep hearing, people keep saying they're only doing this to scare everybody. Now, the media is supposed to be trying to scare everybody. What I want to know is why. Now, this is where I'm at a loss, because I'm trying as hard as I can to put my finger on why anybody believes that the media needs to scare anyone where this virus is concerned. Because at the end of the day, what purpose would that serve? It doesn't help the economy. It's not helping anybody that is trying to live their lives. It's not a good thing across the board. Now, the famous cliche has always been follow the money. All right. Who benefits from where this thing may or may not go? That's what I need to know. Who benefits from the scare tactics? Now, here's the backside of this. Good evening, Denise. Thank you for checking in. I see you. The backside of this is this, and this is something that I think we need to be paying attention to as everyday people and consumers. When will we recognize that by all right, we're being sacrificed for the sake of the economy? The people in this country, we ain't gonna even talk about all the other countries. Let's talk about this country. The people in this country are all being told, go back to work. They're opening the economy slowly, as they call it. And they're doing this under the pretense that this virus has gone away. But what I don't understand is that we haven't seen any signs of it going away. All they did was put it into the media that everything was going to be okay. And everybody needs to get back to work and the country needs to get back started. Well, in the vein of following the money, the same would apply. Because now, if you're going to follow the money, you're going to end up seeing that the people who actually benefit from what's going on, the economy reopening, and not the scare tactics, because the scare tactics serve no purpose. And in fact, I think go against everything that the people who want the economy back open to be. Now, your y'all's president insists that everybody needs to get back to work and that the economy needs to open back up. That was the one thing he was hinging his whole presidency on, was the economy, which we already know he inherited, even though he claims he's the one that did it. Good evening, Val. It's good to see you. But we know that the economy has taken a turn, and there are some things that have taken place that are not good. But we also know that there are a lot of people who are dying. Now, there are those who don't believe that this thing even exists because it hasn't affected them. Well, it's sad to say that where this thing is headed, somebody you know is going to die. That's right, Dennis McCullum, absolutely. The masters need the slaves back to work. Don't get confused about what's going on. Phyllis says the media is putting out info they are given. You have to decipher and research it yourself and apply it to your circumstances. And I absolutely agree. The problem is that I think not enough people actually do the research or are using critical thinking in that process and making any attempts to make sense of what's going on or trying to follow the money, as I say. So the problem is this. The American public is being sacrificed. There are sacrificial lambs. I hope that I'm not one of them. We're walking around out here every day, and some people are actually forgetting to put on masks or not wanting to put on masks, and they don't care. And they're walking around out here pretending like everything is sweet. It ain't sweet. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Now, the question becomes, will we or how do we survive all of this? Well, I am no doctor and I'm no scientist, but I can say this much. I, from my own personal experience, happen to know that this thing is real, and I'm going to do everything in my power to protect myself and my family from it. So, with that, we all have to be mindful of doing what we need to do to take care of our people and try not to get caught up in all of the hoopla of the of propaganda and media BS and Facebook memes, because I've seen every kind of possible answer that people can think of to act as though this thing is not real. So I don't know. Yes, Dennis, you said estimated to have 170,000 deaths by October. In case y'all don't know, that ain't nothing but a couple of months away. That's a whole lot of folks. So all I can say is pay attention, y'all, and make sure that you take care of your business, because the fallout behind all of this, and I've said this before, y'all one day y'all gonna think back and y'all gonna say, yeah, he said, y'all gonna talk about all the stuff that I said. He say that all the time. The fallout behind this, we have yet to see the results of. It's coming. And when it comes, it ain't gonna be nothing nice. So, and then to top all of that off, we got this clown in Ohio, Stephen Sullivan. Thank you. Senator Stephen Huffman, I'm sorry, in Ohio, who made the statement that he wonders if colored people don't get the COVID-19 because they don't wash their hands as much. Now, he actually made this statement. Now, I'm going to tell y'all like this. I'm an old truck driver. Good evening, Kim Shelton. How are you tonight? And in my business, I've run across all kinds of folks. And I have never seen more people than those of the Caucasian persuasion walk into a bathroom, go in there and blow the whole spot up, and come out of there and walk past them sinks like they don't exist. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. The amazing thing to me, that if you want to get into history, historically speaking, he don't really want to have that conversation about who don't wash or who don't clean. He ought to let that go. That's not even a conversation that he wants to get into. I promise you. So That's that's an amazing assertion on his part. Anyway, according to y'all's president, affectionately known by some as Bunker Bitch, who is apparently deaf, he can't hear. Well, he stated today that there is no systematic racism in policing. Imagine that. Well, I think what he should have said, there's no such thing as systematic racism in policing when it comes to white people. I don't know how he would know the difference, considering he's never had to deal with systematic racism, because he doesn't look anything like any of us. Aside from the fact that he's had money all his life and never had to deal with what we've had to deal with on the side of poverty and our environment. So he and his colleagues refuse to open their ears. Good evening, Regina. Good evening, Latika Billups. The tea lady is in the building. Thank you for showing up. They refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing or any sort of how they have their hand in everything that's going on, which only tells me one thing, that they themselves are guilty by default, whether they even know it or not. They don't know what fairness and justice looks like, because again, they've never had to deal with being treated unfairly or dealing with what comes with the criminalization of black skin, the dehumanization of black life. That's not something they even have to deal with. So I would caution them about how they view our world, because they don't live in it and they've never had to. So they just don't get it. By default, they support the mistreatment, the murder, and dehumanization of black life, and they're guilty. They collude with one another in order to make these things happen, to make things more difficult. Now, they are no different than everyone who claims that they love the Confederate flag, which now, excuse me, y'all, I wanted to sneeze, it ain't coming out. There are those who really don't, and I believe this, who really don't understand what the Confederate flag really represents. I mean, let's be honest. Many of the people who support that ideology have rarely ever, if at all, picked up a book or read history or understand the truth about what it is that they believe. Good evening, Davy. It's good to see you. And because of that, they continue to spew and spout ridiculousness at every opportunity. But as I always say, they don't want to turn it loose because, like I always say, y'all, another one of my always sayers, power concedes nothing without demand. And as of late, the demands have been many in regard to what it is that we expect and want from those around us in this country. We expect to be treated fairly and equally, and the symbolism of the Confederate flag is not one that is acceptable by us for many reasons. But I'm going to get into that. So, speaking of the Confederate flag, apparently Ray Ciccarelli, and I believe I'm pronouncing that right, who was a NASCAR driver, and y'all know yesterday I put my man's picture up here, my man Kirk Price, who was the black official at NASCAR who knelt in front of thousands, or I don't know if there was that many people there, but because with the COVID and everything, but he knelt in the stand, in the pit area when they played the national anthem to show his solidarity as a black man, of course, and to protest, peaceful protest, along with Bubba Wallace, who is one of the leading NASCAR drivers. Well, this guy, Ray Cicerelli, apparently decided today that he is quitting NASCAR. He said if this is what the direction that NASCAR is headed in, he quits. So he said that after the 2020 season, he will no longer be driving a car at NASCAR. Well, here's the only thing. I say he should quit now. If you that upset about it, my brother, park your car and go on somewhere else. But here's the thing. It appears that he hasn't started in a race this season. He failed to qualify for the next large race, which is the Next Era Energy 250 at Daytona, even though he's still listed in NASCAR's entry list for Saturday's race at Homestead Miami Speedway. He's only had 18 career starts dating back to 2017, and he's only had one top 10 finish and a 9th place in last season in Michigan. I believe that he thought that this thing was going to go a little differently for him than it did. I think he thought that many people were going to get behind him and rally behind him and hoop and holler and jump up and down about this Confederate flag. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I'm actually quite shocked by the lack of response from so many. I just knew that the pushback from them removing the Confederate flag from NASCAR was going to garner way more backlash than it has so far. Renee, absolutely. It's good to see you. Thank you for checking in. Yes, who is he? He's nobody. And that's that. And there's my point. You know, here's a guy that obviously is making every attempt to make himself relevant in the race game than he is. He claimed that he was already going to retire from NASCAR, but with this announcement, it kind of solidified his decision. Goodbye. Goodbye, good riddance. Anyway, ain't nobody going to miss him. And the first time I ever heard his name was when it came on the news because this guy claimed he was quitting. Even if he wanted to return to the race at this point, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle because apparently he got dragged pretty bad all over Twitter today. And someone even stated NASCAR Truck Series is going to have to find someone else to finish 28th each week because Ray Cicerelli is done with all this racial equality BS. And then someone made the comment that he's insulted more races than he's won. I thought that was pretty clever. Truck driver owner Ray Cicerelli says he won't continue in NASCAR after this year. I come in ready for coming out and see blatant racism and removing himself from the sport. Guys like him are part of the problem, and that's exactly right. Okay? And he shouldn't be upset. Why? Because this, ladies and gentlemen, is the real Confederate flag. That's what the real Confederate flag looks like. And that flag represents the very last lap of every race. And that's enough of that. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, the other interesting thing that came up today that I'm happy to see is that General Mark Milley has decided to distance himself from Trump and his shenanigans. Yeah, he stood up there and he made the point of saying that he should not have been a part of Trump's march on the church in Washington, where he pepper sprayed and gassed and shot flashbangs and rubber bullets at the citizens. And it made it look bad for the military because the military is supposed to be nonpartisan. And I'm glad that he did that. And he is yet another general who has distanced himself from Trump and his shenanigans. Now I'm gonna show y'all what difference that makes. When Ladies and gentlemen, let me stop right here for 1 second, and I want everybody here. I want to see some hearts. I want to see some love. My man Kirk Price is on this live. Kirk, brother, I want to tell you personally, you my new hero, brother. You my new hero. I gave you shouts out yesterday. We did a whole segment on you. I want you to know, brother, we appreciate you. Y'all give my man Kirk plenty love up in here. This is the NASCAR official who kneeled in front of the world to let them all know what it is. My man. All right. Now, this particular general is now one of the many who has distanced himself from DJ Samsonite. Good to see you, my brother. From President Trump. But now here's the telling part. Y'all all know election time is coming. It is going to be here in November. Y'all also know that that person is not going to go quietly, and he is not going to go probably without being forced. But what we can understand and be happy about in the way that these things are being handled is that you do not have to worry about the United States military backing any sort of a coup where he thinks that he's going to maintain that office. If his cronies and his people, the militias and all these people who think that they're going to support him and say that he is going to be dragged out of there, whatever the case may be, it ain't going to happen, bruh. When election time is over, and y'all know that I encourage everybody to please get your vote on. When election time comes, that dude is up out of here. He gone. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's cracks in the foundation. His own people are beginning to turn on him. And that's enough for me. I already know how this is going to go. Proof of that was by the elections held on yesterday in Atlanta, when all of those people didn't get the opportunity. Well, I ain't gonna say they didn't get the opportunity to vote. A lot of people waited in line for hours and hours and hours, and much respect to them. Shouts out and props to all of them, because they're determined to do their part and make sure that this country gets back on track and goes in the directions that it needs to be going in. This guy right here, General Milley, he ain't no joke. He is nonpartisan. He ain't playing no games. And Trump will not be in office come November. Do your part, people. Everybody, please do your part. Okay? Won't be no support of his wanting to be a dictator. That's not gonna happen. He doesn't have the military on his side, which is a great thing. Now, here's the part that I want to get to that is an issue. I can't make my mind up if I know I'm disturbed by this, but I don't know. I haven't decided what the best way to handle something like this is, or what to think about it. Now, y'all's president, you know, as I keep saying, y'all's president, has decided to hold a campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That wouldn't be so bad. But he's decided he's going to hold his campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth, of all times. Well, that's kind of a slap in the face. You know, you want to think that he wouldn't do something like that deliberately, like it'd be a mistake. But we all know that it's not. We all know that somebody in his cabinet, first of all, he ain't smart enough to think of nothing like that. He probably never knew what Juneteenth even was. Somebody in his cabinet put him up on game and told him to do that. He knows that something like that would absolutely get under some people's skin. He knows that that is more that passive aggressive BS that he be on. Now, I'm sure that everyone here is familiar with Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if you're not specifically Tulsa, Oklahoma, but the Tulsa, Oklahoma riots, the destruction of Black Wall Street. If you haven't had any idea what that's about, check out this series on Netflix called The Watchmen. Now, The Watchmen does a good job at depicting what took place on May 31st to June 1st of 1921 when the riots took place. And in fact, the 99th anniversary was just last week before last. We talked about it here on the show. When you think about the slaughter and the destruction that took place during that time, and the fact that over 300 black lives were lost and billions of dollars in businesses were lost, and not one person, white, was held accountable, you have to ask yourself, why would you want to go and rattle that cage? Well, this is the type of person that we're talking about. And I use the term person very lightly because I personally don't believe that he's human. Anyway, the part of the storyline in The Watchmen is pretty interesting because they show all of the stuff that kind of went on and the destruction of it all. I'm trying to find my notes here. Y'all have to forgive me. I get a little out of pocket sometimes. But the thing of it is, you have to ask yourself, why would somebody work that hard to agitate an entire race of people? I guess this is sort of, his stab back at the fact that the whole country, 50 states, or was it what they call the lower 48, although they are protesting in Alaska. I don't know about Hawaii. I did see some protests taking place in Alaska, in Juneau, as a matter of fact, and around the world. And because of that alone, I'm sure he's pretty upset, because he's got to know that the world is not in his favor. He is a person who operates out of fear, his own fear, and attempting to scare other people. But I believe that his bark is far worse than his bite, and his day and his time are soon coming. And I won't be very happy until I see him in handcuffs. That's probably going to be next, which will be fine with me. Anyway, my question though, and I still really kind of need to know, is why is he doing this? And that takes me back to what I just said a few minutes ago about an attempt at staying in the office that he's in, or thinking that he's going to stay in that office. If he continues to make these sorts of moves and stirring the pot and trying to get something started. See, I think there's a more sinister plot at play. I think there's something else going on. I think he has something else on his mind. And if he can get enough of a rise out of people, then he can get something started. Because I believe he still thinks that, but I think that he's got to know that he doesn't have the support that he thinks he does. Even some of his most diehard supporters have fallen off. They're not going no more. And all I can say is that I hope that whatever it is that he's got on his mind about doing this, it gets shut down. But I know that he doesn't care about that. The fact is, just as an example, today I found out that during these protests, they have been having spy planes flying over the protests for the purpose of extracting information through cellular services. Now, apparently, and they've done it over the main one. Well, they talked about it flying over Washington for one thing. You know, Washington D.C. has the most protected airspace in the entire world. Period. You better not fly a drone over by the White House, or you're gonna be in a whole lot of trouble. So apparently they were flying a plane that circled the White House or the area like 30 times or something like that. And they say they think they were using it for cellular to gather information from cell phones. In other words, who all was out there. This is kind of like, Big Brother watching type thing, And so these are the things that are happening. We got to be real careful about. But apparently Congress got wind of this, and they are demanding that the FBI and anybody else that's involved immediately stop the practice. Then again, it begs the question, did he order this? And if he did those organizations go along with it because he told them to, or was there something else going on? See, there's so much stuff happening that you got to be, it's getting crazy. Now, they did it over Washington, Minneapolis, and Las Vegas. So far, that's what we know about. Dennis, you're absolutely right. We do have 2 Congress. But this particular this type of thing is absolutely a violation of the First and the Fourth Amendment. Where the citizens of this country are concerned. But this is part of the reason why, too, like, for example, yesterday, for those of y'all who was on here with me, now, I'm going to say what I got to say. They will have to shut me down, shut me up. And yesterday when my feed went out, needless to say, there's always going to be that speculation that it went out for some reason that didn't have anything to do with me. But whatever the case is, I'm not one that's going to remain silent, nor will I be quiet. I'm going to say what needs to be said, and if it is incendiary to those who don't like it, then so be it. But this is part of the reason why we as a people in particular need to move more toward technological aspects of life and start thinking more about platforms that benefit us, because as it stands right now, everything that we do, every platform that we use is not controlled by us. So there's only so much that at some point, if it just came to that we would be able to say or allowed to say, or without having someone or something to shut us all down. So this is just one of those things that we have to think about in regard to the future and where all of this technology is really headed. Like, as much as I love technology, technology can be used as a tool or it can be used as a weapon. Depends on whose hands it's in and how it is applied. So that's just something that we need to give a lot of thought to. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about tonight, y'all. Yesterday we talked about, or I discussed, the removal of monuments. And I was on the fence yesterday. I had to give it some thought. I had to sleep on it. Even though this is not a new topic, it's something that I've given some thought to before. But it occurred to me after something that I said, actually. I said something and it registered something, triggered something else in me. And I realized that when we talk about the removal of monuments, a lot of people don't want that to happen because they're saying that it's like taking away part of history, and if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, here's the problem. Do we really need to know who the individuals were who were treasonous toward these United States? And I'm curious, and this is something people don't think about. Let's say the South had actually won the Civil War. Would they have statues of George Washington and all of the other commanders of the United States Army that would have lost? I bet you they wouldn't. Then when we talk about the symbolism of the Confederate flag and of these monuments and these people that fought against the United States as another, wanting to be another country, another way of doing things, and in fact fought for the salvation of actual slavery. In other words, if they had had it their way, we would still probably be in chains, or definitely would not have ended being in chains toward the end of the 1800s, or should I say 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. And in fact, Juneteenth, the people in Texas did not know that they were free until 1865. But just think, if the South had won, would we still be, in fact, we would be closer to having been in chains than we are now. So, when we talk about the symbolisms, the flag, the statues, yes, I believe they need to come down. And I'll tell you one of my biggest reasons why. When Germany lost the war, World War II to be specific, with all of the atrocious things that they did, you don't see people of, or should I, let me just back up. You don't see Jews or anyone in Europe glorifying anybody from the Hitler or the Nazi Party or any of those that was raising all that hell. You don't see no statues or monuments or flags flying from any of that. And guess what? Not only have they not forgotten, you better not think about trying to pull it over there no more. What makes us different? Why do we feel that we need it in our face to know that it doesn't need to happen again? You can pull that crap down. Today, in Belgium, they took down this statue. For those of you who don't know who that is, let me tell you. That is King Leopold II. He was the king of Belgium, and he literally brutalized the entire Congo. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you, and this is the part where I do my shameless plug. If you don't have your copy of The Black Factor, get your copy at bmforbes.com or Amazon. Now, King Leopold of Belgium, also known, he was known as the Butcher of the Congo. Wait a minute, you know what? I know what's wrong. Hold on, y'all. Got to put on my specs. His story is almost never told or written about in academic history and has virtually been swept under the rug. For years, his exploits, and I mean that's from 1885 to 1908, his exploits make Adolf Hitler look like a choir boy. He is single-handedly responsible for one of the world's worst genocides. The deaths of over between 10 and 15 million Africans. See, the Jews only had 6 million. This cat right here is responsible. Now, he's just talking about the ones that he killed. We ain't going to talk about the ones that they maimed because they chopped their arms and hands off. And like I always tell y'all, don't believe me, look it up. King Leopold was a beast, and I don't mean that in a good way. Leopold turned the entire Congo into his own personal plantation, concentration camp, and Christian ministry. The plantation commodity was rubber, and his reign was dubbed the Rubber Terror. The more intriguing part is that he never set foot in the Congo. Not once. And he ran that place and murdered a whole bunch of our folks. A lot of folks don't know about that guy because that's one of them that they don't put in the history books. They don't talk about it. So they took his statue down today. Then they did say that it would remain in a museum or something like that. It's a 150-year-old statue or monument. It was a very deadly dude. And he did a lot of horrible things. He claimed that they brought civilization to Africa. Who does that sound like? They claim they discovered America and civilized the Native Americans. Sound just like somebody else I heard about. But all he really did was come and enslave a bunch of people and kill a bunch of folks. I believe that these monuments need to come down. Renee, no. Hitler was a nice guy compared to Leopold. I encourage every one of you to look him up and do your research on Leopold. King Leopold III of Belgium. He wasn't nothing nice, let me tell you. And again, he doesn't get nearly enough credit in history. Now, well, anyway, and the thing is this. The demands for the removal of his monument came from predominantly one group, and that's the youth. Much like we're witnessing today from our youth. We as elders in this society, in my opinion, we drop the ball. We fall behind on where things need to be going. And so many of the older individuals, like we talked about yesterday, Donald Trump is 77. No, 72. 3. Joe Biden is 77. Mitch McConnell is 78. These men are attempting to hold on to all that they remember about the way this country was and keep things at the status quo. You know, I hear a lot of young people when they talk about politics and they say that things have changed and things are changing and they need to be different. And I used to kind of push back on that idea to some degree, but not so much anymore, because I realize that if we maintain the status quo and we maintain the old way of doing things, we will not make any progress. And particularly as black people in this country, we will not make much progress, because the men who came up in a time where it was legal to lynch or maim a black person or treat a black person in some kind of way, they're the ones in power now. Do we really need that? Do we really want that? You know, there are my own children at times when they were growing up would tell me, Dad, you know, you got some kind of old ways of thinking when it comes to the way things are. And I used to say to them, nah, you know, I know how I'm thinking. I know what's going on, but y'all don't understand the world yet. Well, I'm going to say this. They were partially right, and I was partially wrong. There are a lot of things that need to change, and they need to change with the youth in mind. And I personally, I think I'm at a point now where what I would love to see politically is that more younger people would get into politics. That the more young people at least in their 30s and 40s, would begin to start earlier at picking up the reins of where this country is and where it goes. We need to have term limits on these senators and these congressmen so that they don't continue being in these positions like a Strom Thurmond for 48 years, who was a segregationist. You know, these sorts of things need to stop. And we have to, at some point, begin to trust our own teachings that we taught our children and gave them everything that they needed to be good people, to be the people that we can depend on to move our country forward and to take care of us in our old age, to be sure that we are entitled to health care so that we can live after we've done our job. You know, here we are right now. People are worried about the COVID and this clown, Stephen Huffman of Ohio, senator, who doesn't understand that part of the reason why black people are affected more disproportionately by COVID-19 is because we have less opportunity for health care. And because we have less opportunity for health care, it places us in a vulnerable position. And it makes our lives that much more difficult. Although we survive, we always have, and we always will. And that within itself causes major problems for the powers that be. But if we maintain what we've seen lately, if we get on the bandwagon and push the momentum of what's taking place right now forward, we can look forward to a better future, if not for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren. Something has to give. It's up to us to make sure that we do our part to make that happen. And I think personally, by and large, I believe that we are headed that way. I do. I believe that our children are going to make the difference. I personally am very proud of my three. And I'm going to take this dad moment and gloat because I have three very independent, strong-willed leaders that came from my household, and they are out in the world making a difference. And for me, I trust that my teachings got them where they are, and I know that the roots that they come from are going to make sure that they bear good fruit, that all things that they put forward, that they work hard toward and they put their energy into, they will achieve, and it will benefit all of us. Of that, I am sure. So with that, I believe there needs to be a changing of the guard, and youth needs to take up the reins and get in the game. And I wish I was where my children are at the ages they are now, psychologically and every other Lee. I wish I had been thinking as hard as they do. But here we all are, and all we can do is get behind them and try as hard as we can to be the wind beneath their wings. And there it is. I'm going to let it go tonight, y'all. And try as hard as you can to take care of yourselves. Keep yourselves covered up. Keep yourselves away from the COVID, and keep the COVID away from you. Right quick, I'm going to give a shout out to my girl, Tara Jenkins, Royal Tea LLC, out of Orange, Florida. Plenty of y'all have got her tea, and I appreciate it because it's some good stuff. I love it. Tara can be reached at 386-344-7744. That's T Jenkins at royaltllc.com. And on that note, it's time to go. I appreciate each and every one of y'all for checking in and hanging out with me. I enjoy these little talks. So everybody, have yourselves a wonderful evening. And just have a good night. Take care of yourself. Sleep tight. Sleep well. What was that old nursery rhyme? How did that thing used to go? Now that ain't it. Never mind. Anyway, bye y'all. I'm out.